Real people, real opinions, Real Talk Radio. The multi-award-winning Niall Boylan Show.
Ireland's classic hits.
Very emotional and contentious subject for a lot of you. Tonight we are going to hear from a woman who says she was forced to have a late-term abortion. An incredibly traumatic experience, I'm sure. Laurel Marlantes is a writer and healer who has shared her story in the Washington Post as well as the New York Times. She lives in America with her husband on an island in the Pacific, Northwest, and she joins me now on the line. Good evening to you, Laurel.
Hello.
And I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. It is Laurel, is it?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, because sometimes, you don't get the pronunciations. The lingo doesn't transfer across the Atlantic very, very well.
I know. I'm loving the accent. So.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, well, I tell you what, let's go back to the start, and that would be the best way to talk about this, because as you know, abortion is quite a controversial topic, particularly in Ireland, because we only legalised abortion in Ireland 5 years ago, and that was quite controversial in itself, because the population is kind of split down the middle morally on the rights and the wrongs of abortion, and currently in Ireland, they're now trying to extend abortion to decriminalise doctors who perform abortions outside of the 12-week period or the 22-week period, if indeed a woman's life is in danger. So they're trying to extend that now to, I suppose, an unending or with having no restriction whatsoever. So it's kind of controversial at the moment. But getting back to your story, so you obviously found yourself pregnant. I'm sure you were delighted. And It was a delightful day. And at that, what was your circumstance at that particular time?
Yeah. So my husband and I had just gotten married. It was my first pregnancy. And I developed a medical complication that was, for lack of a better, without getting into too much detail, I had entered extreme preterm labor. And so when you enter extreme preterm labor, the life of the baby once born is at risk, and often the baby won't even make it through the birth process.
Yeah.
And so in America, I was in California, and then I had, during my pregnancy, come up to Washington State. I, and very gratefully so, was given a choice whether or not to continue the pregnancy.
Yeah. And
my husband and I, in consultation with our doctors and given such just the heartbreaking and prognosis of the baby not being able to make it through the labor process, and also in such preterm labor, increased complications can happen for the mother as well.
Yeah.
And so we felt like the best choice for us and what felt right in our hearts was to release the pregnancy. And it was
that must have been a heartbreaking decision. Absolutely, it was, I'm sure, because it was a very much wanted pregnancy. Very wanted, and yes.
Yeah. And I went into terrible grief afterwards, and yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And we hear of similar situations when I've interviewed women who have had fatal fetal abnormalities and gone into similar situations where they have to make that heart-wrenching decision. And for some women, look, it's fine. They want to go through the whole pregnancy and give birth to a child, even if it only lives for an hour. But some women don't want to do that, and I understand that too. But you made this heart-wrenching decision, and I suppose there's a grieving process after that then too.
Absolutely. There's a grieving process because, this was a baby that we had deeply wanted and we had rearranged our life for. I had quit my job to sort of focus on becoming a new mother. And I was in deep grief. And then also, I think in this particular circumstance, there's also this layer of the politicized nature. Also in America, we've just had Roe versus Wade overturned. So we are very much in a, I'm not too familiar with the specifics of your situation in Ireland, but I do know there are parallels. It's an incredibly contentious, high charged subject matter. And I felt like I kept the truth behind my baby's death. So I ended up having to go through with a stillbirth, I had to go through labor and gave birth to a stillborn child. And I spent years basically not telling the truth, sidestepping, people just natural curiosity. Well, what happened?
Yeah.
And
People
I
who
would
maybe
say,
hadn't
"Oh,
seen you in a
we
while and just knew you were pregnant but didn't know the outcome. Yeah.
knew I was pregnant, and they're
Yeah.
like, I mean, I even had friends calling, being like, oh, months later, how are you? Has he arrived yet? And having to kind of say, oh no, I'm so sorry we lost the baby, and hoping that they would stop at that. And it's taken me years and years.
Was
to
there a
really
shame
be able
attached to it? Did you feel a
come forward.
shame?
I felt so. Well, I'll tell you this. I had an experience before I went into the procedure to release the
Pregnancy.
People have different words.
Yeah.
The pregnancy, the child, the fetus, whatever it sort of feels right in your heart.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the social workers who had handed me the papers, because they needed the mother's signature to authorize the medical procedure, she looked at me and she said, "You never tell anyone you signed these papers." And I never forgot that.
Yeah.
And I took that to heart. And I have seen the picket signs, and I have seen the headlines, and my friends included, people I love will have opposing views on this particular issue. And I'll even say, I myself, I wasn't sure, even as a young woman, really where I sort of landed from a morality standpoint past the 12-week cutoff. I never really had clarity on that. I remember at the 12-week mark in my first pregnancy that we ended up having to terminate, being at the clinic for one of your, a sort of routine ultrasound scan.
Yeah.
Exactly. And seeing on the doctor's table a little plexiglass, sort of clear frame, and in it was a note that said, you have the legal right to terminate up to 24 weeks. This was in the state of California.
Yeah.
And I turned to the woman working there and I asked, with honest sort of confusion and judgment, if I'm being honest, is that even legal? I had my doubts. I was like, what? I thought, I come for my 12-week scan. Everything looks good. Like, we're good to go. Like, let's tell Facebook, let's tell the family. And I had, I myself, I guess what I want to air out is I myself wasn't clear on really where I stood morally. And then, classic story, when it happens to you and you're faced with the nuances, things change. And
it's kind of like, let's walk a mile. And I'm the same. I'm a bit conservative. Yeah. I'd be kind of well known for being reasonably conservative in this world.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I haven't walked in your shoes, and I'm not going to judge you, and I wouldn't judge you, and I wouldn't judge any woman who makes a tough decision, particularly in the circumstances you're in.
Yeah.
And I think most people do. I mean, I know you don't like the kind of pro-life, pro-choice conversation because, as far as you're concerned, you didn't have a choice.
I think, as far as I'm concerned, I'm grateful that I had a choice. I'm grateful I lived in a state that technically gave me a choice. I have reservations with that word choice, as I'm afraid that it can trivialize the nature of what is truly going on, right? And we can use the word choice like, would you like, what is your choice on, would you like a hamburger or a cheeseburger? What is your choice here? And, we use this word choice, like, would you like, Thai food or Chinese for dinner?
Yeah.
And
for a lot of women, it's not a choice, particularly if their life is in danger.
Right.
Or whatever.
It's not a choice. And yes. And so in that sense, that word never, and I think that you talked about, did I experience shame afterwards, or why was it hard for me to come forward, is because I felt like people would view me as if I had made this choice. I had chosen to terminate this beloved pregnancy that I had. And by no means was that a choice of mine. I happened to come into a life circumstance that I felt that this was the most moral and loving thing to do, given
when you came out
of my situation,
when you came out, so to speak, and were honest, and had written pieces about it and everything else, those same friends that you kind of had to plumose going back a few years ago and say, oh yeah, we just had complications, so we lost the baby or whatever. Did you then have to re-explain to those people? Did those people start judging you then? Those people who may have been on the pro-life side, so to speak, did they start judging you, or did they accept it?
I will say not to my face. I don't know. I think I have made sort of a personal choice to, I've written this article for the Washington Post, and I was very conscious in not reading any of the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, in order for me to kind of come out and share my story, I need to just kind of stick with, this is my story. This is what I experienced, and really leave, the peanut gallery and the politics in another category for someone else to kind of,
but it is hugely political because it's,
yeah.
well, and you can see it in America at the moment how political it is, by the way, obviously Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see how political. Abortion is one of the big topics. It's one of the big policies of both Democrat and Republican government. And the same here in Ireland. I mean, we can see, in this country at the moment, it is a bit of a hot potato. Not as much as it would have been about 5 or 6 years ago before the referendum, but still a hot potato to talk about because people get really angered by it. And some of the words that are used are outrageous. The names people call each other. So it is one of those things that just seems so divisive.
It's so divisive. And I think what I'm trying to say, if I were to pay too much attention to what those words are, I've heard the words, and if I give them too much of my energy, I'll shut up. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because then I'm doing the me's in the world, the women who have gone through something similar, a disservice. And I know this happened to me about 9 years ago. And had someone been able to speak in a way that could have normalized my experience for me, that would have touched my heart in a way that would have allowed me, I think, to be able to speak more freely, even just to my friends and family.
Yeah, in other words, at the time when it happened to you, it would have been nice to speak to Laurel or another Laurel who was in that situation.
This is my hope.
Yeah, this is your hope.
Yes.
There's at least two of you out there. And have you had many women?
I know there are more. I know there are many, many more.
Have you had many people reach out since you wrote for the Washington Post and the New York Times? Two great articles.
I have had a few, and those have been extremely meaningful. And that's why, I think that's ultimately why I was willing to kind of put myself out there and risk that judgment and risk people, villainizing me or whatever they want to do. I'm sort of like, I'm not going to bother myself with that.
Do you ignore them or do you fight back?
I guess what I will say is, if anything, I think me coming on a radio and talking to you, I think is my version of fighting back.
Yeah,
and
so
kind
you're
of
sharing
saying,
your story.
you're not gonna shut me up, because I know that my choice was made out of love, and I know that I didn't sin, and I know that I'm not a bad, I know I'm a good person, and
Okay, and now of course you have your own online healing practice, Marlantes Healing. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing Marlantes properly, but there you go. Marlantes Healing.
Close enough. Yeah.
What do you mean close enough? Do it properly for me then, so I get it right. Marlantes.
Laurel Marlantes.
Marlantes, okay.
Marlantes.
Okay, so Marlantes Healing, and that's on Instagram, by the way. If anyone wants to follow you on Instagram, it's Laurel Marlantes, at Laurel Marlantes, and I'll spell that at the end of the show, so people, at the end of the interview, so people can find you.
Thank you.
And you're dedicated your time to helping other women who've experienced baby loss through abortion or otherwise. And you've also got a website, marlanteshealing.com. So when you say helping other people, so I suppose people come to you looking for advice.
Yeah, I think it's, and also I would say comfort and a way to kind of walk this path. I think bringing children into the world is something where you never know what you're going to find on your particular life path until you're there. Mm-hmm. We're kind of sold a story that, you get married, you get pregnant, and 9 months later you have a baby, and that, it turns out, is sort of
not always the case.
Often be the exception.
Yeah,
right. Not always the case. There's all sorts of bumps in the road that women and family.
Miscarriage is very
can
common.
Experience.
Extremely common.
Miscarriage, stillbirth, making it. Whether you need to face a choice like we're discussing today around abortion, infertility, just the road of infertility. Is incredibly
That's heartbreaking.
heartbreaking.
I've spoken to women on the air who can't conceive, and it is absolutely heartbreaking to listen to women, because a woman said to me once in the air, which really hurt me, and I really felt it. Which she said, "I don't feel like a woman," and I found that really hard to listen to. That she didn't feel like she was complete as a woman until she could have a baby.
Yeah.
And that's so difficult.
Yeah,
for
I,
them.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It is. It's very difficult. And
When you listen to people say that, okay, they don't agree with abortion because they believe it's being used as a contraception by people who just make mistakes or, accidentally don't use contraception or whatever it is, and they feel it's being used too often by people that they understand. And I remember the big argument, a debate during the referendum here 5 years ago was, okay, we agree with, in certain circumstances, women's life is in danger, fatal fetal abnormality. But as for the rest, we don't agree with that. That's too disposable. So do you have an opinion on that? Or do you think, or do you just agree that it's a choice? Well, we talked about the word choice a minute ago, but do you, for some women, it may be a choice in the very early stages if it's just a choice for economic reasons. I mean, do you agree with all abortion in every situation?
I do. My personal political viewpoint is I'm adamantly pro-choice. That's sort of the terms that we use here in the state, pro-choice and pro-life.
Yeah.
I do believe that a woman has sovereignty over her body. I believe she has sovereignty over her relationship to how she wants to become a mother, when she wants to become a mother. And I believe, the issue not only is about sovereignty over your body, but I also believe that there's this sort of sovereignty over, I sort of talk about this issue really kicks up these big questions, which is why it's so charged from my perspective, where it's like, when does life begin? And when does the soul enter the body? And these are deep spiritual questions. And I believe that every individual has the right to answer those questions.
But doesn't their opinion change as their lives change? And I'll give you an example. I've given this one before. I had a woman on the air during the referendum campaign, and she was pro-choice. And I found her a little bit insulting, I'll be honest with you. She kept using words like clump of cells and zygote to refer to a pregnancy, which I found for women listening was a bit insulting, particularly women who couldn't conceive maybe or something like that, or had miscarriages or whatever. I found those words insulting. But anyway, this same woman, she was a campaigner. She agreed with, abortion up to the hour of birth. And she then, 2 years later, I spotted her Facebook page and she'd put an image up of a scan. She had her first pregnancy. She just got married. And the scan was a 12-week scan or 13-week scan, whatever it is. And it said, my new baby is coming into the world. And I looked at her and I went, okay, so it's a baby now, is it? It was a zygote 2 years ago, but now because you want that. And there's that case of sometimes it's a baby when you want it, but not a baby when you don't want it. And I suppose that kind of plays into the pro-life people's hands, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think for me, that's why it has my opinion is that that choice has to be the individual's choice, because that woman has a right to evolve or has a right to sort of shift her thinking and shift the way that her heart feels towards a pregnancy.
Yeah.
2 years ago, it was a clump of cells, and now it's a baby. She has a right to be fluid with that. And I guess that would be how I.
But look, I mean, you made a tough choice, and again, I don't judge people. I never do. I try my best not to, anyway. You
Me too. I try my best not to too.
Yeah, I mean, look, you had a very tough. You did again. I'm going to use the word choice because it's the wrong word to use, but you had a very tough time. And it is the right choice in the sense where I'm grateful that I was given a choice. I am so grateful that I lived in a state where making a choice was an option, and so I don't want to sort of. Where is that now in America? By the way, I mean, America's in turmoil now when it comes to. I mean, even in some states, I believe in some states now you can't even get the morning after pill.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, state by state, it's very extreme. I don't have the stats on each state, but we're in a frightening place, especially a year ago when when Roe versus Wade was overturned, and there was, and states were now able to go back.
And is it true that if a woman goes from
abortion?
That's what I'm saying. So is it true that if a woman goes from a state where it's illegal to a state where it's not illegal to have a termination, that she can then be charged when she comes back to the state? Is that true?
I wish I knew the answer to that.
Oh, okay.
I hesitate to say anything on air that I can't.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
But but it's a great question, and
That would
I
be
probably
sad.
should know specifics. And unfortunately, if I were to take a guess, my guess could be potentially yes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, that
I think
would be
it depends on
extremely
what
sad.
state you went to.
Yeah.
What state you went to, and if you were sort of granted
Yeah.
protection by that state. I'm not sure.
Well, look, it was lovely talking to you. And those articles, by the way, in the Washington Post, New York
Likewise.
Times, if anyone wants to read them. And you have a website,
Thank
and
you.
it's Marlantes
Yes.
Healing, and it's MARLANTES, Marlantes.
Correct.
Healing, HEALING.com, or you can go to her Instagram, and it's at Laurel, as in Laurel and Hardy, kind of spelled similar. Laurel Marlantes. It's at Laurel Marlantes on Instagram. Laurel, it was lovely talking to you. Listen, thank you very much indeed, and good luck in the future, and I wish you well.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much.
Real people, real opinions, Real Talk Radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.